right. Looks like we're recording. I'm going to go ahead and kick things off and welcome everyone to Boise ITSM meeting for February 2021. Here we are in February already. Hope everyone's had a good start to the year and appreciate everyone joining. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and just walk us through a little bit of an agenda before we introduce our guest speaker for this month. All right, is everyone seeing my screen all right?
Yes, sir.
All right, terrific. All right, thank you for attending. Welcome to the Boise ITSM Talks meeting for February 9th. Appreciate everyone taking time out of your day to attend our ongoing virtual monthly meetings. We've had some really good ones the past several months, and I'm excited to continue these forward into 2021. I know we have some first timers attending the meeting for this month. So welcome to all of you. Also welcome to everyone who's outside of the Boise area. This meeting has been running since November of 2017. And obviously with COVID and the fact that we're all virtual now, we've moved these meetings over to being 100% virtual since last September. And I appreciate all of our local attendees attending as always, but also appreciate those of you that are outside of the Boise area for being able to join us virtually and expanding our audience and the contributions that we're able to have as well. And of course, thank you to Joe Macaluso. I'll introduce Joe here in just a minute. Thank him for presenting at our session today and looking forward to hearing what Joe has to share around what he's learned with implementing customer journey mapping. Quick introduction on our meeting, and I do this at the beginning of every meeting, talking about our why. Why are we having this meeting and what our vision is? And these meetings are really about working to deliver actionable information, to be able to have things that you can take away from the presentations and go implement in your organization, or at least giving you a good starting point and some good guidance. We definitely encourage attendee participation, and I expect, especially with the presentation today, that there will definitely be some good opportunities for some Q&A, so we want to leave some time for those at the end. And hopefully through the continuing of these monthly meetings, we become better leaders and we can continue to fill the ITSM void that we find in our organizations. All right, I'm going to hand the screen sharing over to Joe so he can share his screen and take us through his presentation. As I introduce Joe, I want everyone to know that Joe and I have been friends and have been working together now for the past few years. And I'm very proud of Joe. He's done a fantastic job of not only continuing through his ability to become more of an ITIL and an IT service management learner and taking those things from a training perspective, and he's a strategic leader now. He's taken a lot of the managing professional classes, but also making things real and taking them into his organization and actually doing some actual implementation and finding ways in the face of the typical organizational resistance that we sometimes see to be able to do those things successfully. And it's, I think, really exciting to be able to see those types of things happening and, you know, see how Joe's been able to move things forward within the work that he's doing. Joe works for Pearson Education as a director of value stream engineering, and he really has latched on with being able to integrate things like continual improvement and journey mapping and value stream mapping and working on solving issues around digital content production and closing customer feedback loops as well. So Joe works in Denver, Colorado. He's a native of Colorado and lives there with his wife and his son. And I'm really excited to welcome Joe to our meeting today. So everyone, please welcome Joe, and I'll hand Joe, go ahead and take over presentation rights and let you go through your presentation.
Sounds good. And that's right, Keith, we have been in the classroom together. I'll never forget your voice, but it's nice to be able to see you here. The video's never on when we're in class. So. All right, let me share my screen here. Bear with me. Usually I share the right screen when I do this. All right, there we go. Can everyone see okay? All right. First off, when I start this off, I had a lot of fun with Outlook transitions, or I guess PowerPoint transitions. So enjoy the animations, and hopefully it doesn't get in the way of the conversation, but I had a lot of fun with it. But don't let that distract from the root of our conversation. As Jeff said, I'm a value stream engineer at Pearson Education, and I feel like I'm pretty lucky in the sense that I don't have any direct reports. I don't manage people, and my team that I work under, the leadership team that I work under, operates very much so in a servant leadership way and a decentralized leadership fashion, which really enables me to have a lot of freedom inside of my organization to do what I think would bring the most value to either Pearson or the customer. And so with that said, I get to play cowboy, and I'm going to talk you through an opportunity I've had to introduce customer journey mapping to the organization. I find when I look back in my career, I've been getting training in Agile and Scrum and Lean and Kanban, et cetera, like for the last 10 years. Like, this has been what I've immersed myself in. And the part that I've struggled with the most over my career is actually getting the people I work with and the organizations I work with to believe in these things themselves. Like, it's one thing for me to get educated and to adopt these mental models for myself. It's a whole other beast entirely to get folks who aren't necessarily willing to dedicate their own time to gaining their own understanding. It's an onus on you now as the one who did get that education to talk about it and convince folks about the value of this. And so this story that I put together today really is kind of talking about, it's less about the nuances of a customer journey and what a customer journey is and why we use customer journeys. I'm not going to talk about that today. I'm going to talk about the politics of getting customer journeys as a practice into my organization. So here we go. All right, so the first thing I wanted to start with was just to get you all on the same page with me in case you don't remember drive stakeholder value, or if you haven't taken it yet, what is a customer journey, and just to get us all on the same page there. So a customer journey, what it does for us is it sort of abstracts any of what we do as a business into defining it in terms of the customer experience. And so it gives you a perspective, it gives your organization a perspective of the problem you're trying to solve for the customer within their context. A lot of times what we fall into in our organizations is the trap of looking at things from the inside out and saying, I've got this product and a whole backlog of ideas, what am I going to do about it? Instead of asking the question of, like, I've got these customers in an experience, what can I do to optimize the opportunities I have to interact with them across that experience? And so the customer journey sort of paints the picture of what a customer goes through end to end, from discovering a product or a service or an organization to deriving value from it at the end of the day. And so the customer starts with exploring their different opportunities or options. If we were shopping for chicken at the grocery store, we'd all have different grocery stores to look at. We'd all have different brands of chicken to buy. And so we explore and try to understand what chicken we think is best for us. And we build relationships then across that journey. We may go out to the grocery store and talk to the retail clerk and inquire about their different chickens and why one is better than the other. And we're gonna then specify to that retail clerk what our chicken needs to be, like what I'm gonna be doing with it. And if inquire whether they have an opportunity to meet my demand with what chicken they offer. And I may negotiate with the clerk. Maybe I'll say I'm going to come back when it's buy one, get one free. And that's fine, we can do that. But then we go and we take the chicken home and we procure it. We take it out of the bag and we put it on our kitchen counter. And then we cook it and we prepare it for our family. Then we eat the chicken at the end of the day, right? We make a nice dish with it. We eat the chicken. Our body manufactures that chicken into energy, and we derive value from eating that chicken as a result. And so I use that analogy because I find it's a simple way to walk people through what a customer journey is in real terms. Anything can be a customer journey. If you have some demand as a person and you are seeking some satisfaction to that demand, you can wrap a customer journey around it. And this is a concept that I've introduced to my organization to help solve some of the problems that we have. And so when I talk about the customer journey in academic context, or in that absurd chicken analogy, let's bring it home. Like, okay, given that, why did I choose to use customer journey maps as a solution to some of the problems that I saw at Pearson? So let me talk about some of those problems. There was literal conversation with developers, with marketers, with business analysts, where folks literally told me that they didn't necessarily know why we were working on some of the projects we were on our backlog. Like they got it, like their boss prioritized it. It's like they can see value in it, they understand why, but they don't understand why that got chosen over another thing. So there's a lack of visibility internally in terms of answering that why question when you consider the backlog of items that we work on as a staff. The other thing is that even our leadership team, to some extent, and especially the folks who are asking the why question at all, lacked visibility into the customer experience itself. And so we would say that we're going to improve some part of our product that we think is going to make them use some function of it more often, but we don't know actually what using that function does in their real life. Like, what are we observing? What is the customer actually trying to achieve? That question couldn't be answered. Or if it could be answered, it was limited to only a select few of folks who just happen to be have access to that data. And lastly, of course, because customer journey maps are exclusively about painting this customer experience picture, we were getting reports that our customers were not happy necessarily with the whole experience. We get NPS scores and their verbatims that declare that there are parts of the experience that they just simply aren't satisfied with. I have to preface this to say we are a successful organization. We sell more than we did the previous year quite often, and our products are valuable. But despite that, we still get reports that the experience is suboptimal and that there's opportunity there. And these are things that are hard to solve when you are just perceiving the problem from the inside out. So the thing is, how do we solve those three problems in the context of a customer journey? And I go back to this notion that the customer journey paints the picture of the experience. And what you're trying to do when folks are asking the questions like, why are we working on this project? Or how are our customers using our product when it gets deployed to production? Or why are the customer unhappy? Then you start to realize that if you paint a picture of the customer's experience outside of their usage of our services or products, you can begin to answer some of those questions. And these are things that you don't traditionally think that an engineer would benefit from. I mean, this is why I think we have these this lack of visibility inside of our organizations, and why we have this outside or this inside out view of things is because we make this assumption that the engineer just has to look at the JIRA ticket and find out why we're doing things. And and that may be satisfying to some people, but I think for a lot of us, if we're looking to be proud of what we do in our work, then we want to know what we're working on and why. And I think an engineer understanding the customer experience really does benefit in him or her understanding how they may approach their job to solve the problem. Okay, I understand what customer journey mapping is. We understand why I chose to use this technique inside of my organization to solve the problems identified. So how did I actually get it to work? Like, this is really the root of the conversation. So I can sit in my home office here and imagine all of the different things all the different benefits that I know a customer journey has. I've got to convince other people in my organization of those same benefits, and I need to get them to use their limited time to accommodate my ideas to flesh this out and see if it's worthwhile. Okay, so let's establish who I am again. I am a free spirit in my organization. I have a leadership structure, but my leadership lets me operate on what I see as most valuable. And so I came up with this idea, and I had a vision in my head about why this idea was a good idea. I'm making an assumption when I say that, though. It's like, I only have the information I know, and perhaps I'm wrong. Maybe my idea is not such a good idea. And the only way that I am going to do that is to talk to somebody about it. And so I decided to make a partnership inside my organization. I have a friend, a peer of mine that works within my group who reports to the same leadership. And I talked to him about this. I shared my vision with him and explained the benefit that I think customer journey mapping could have to our organization. And he debated with me. And we had a couple of sessions. We had about an hour session per week. I asked if I could put something recurring on his calendar. He agreed. And these hour sessions had one agenda item, which was to essentially try to get this friend of mine on the same level of understanding as myself on what customer journey mapping is. The thing that I want to call out is my friend here, this partner that I've made, he's I think he's a 14-year veteran at Pearson. And if you all know what Pearson Education is, they're a textbook company for the most part, or at least that's what they used to be. And so this friend of mine is, he's old school. He was back when they had print factories and they had to get their books off a manufacturing line. And so he has overseen the digital transformation of his product portfolio. He's a product manager. And so this person has a lot of context around the business, a lot of history with the business, super valuable, and somebody that you might stereotype as rigid in their old-fashioned ways. Well, let me tell you that I found a good partner in this person. Noren heard me out. We had a conversation about customer journey mapping. He had a lot of questions about customer journey mapping. He didn't understand it fully. I didn't understand it fully myself when he started asking some of the questions. We explored this idea together, and then we decided that together this was a good idea. And the cool part about my friend is because of his long tenure at Pearson, he has a lot of partnerships of his own already that I could leverage. And so we built a coalition. We decided that this idea was good enough, and we politicked one-on-one. We reached out to these folks and we said, we'd like you to be a part of our customer journey work group. We think there's a lot of opportunity here, and we think it would be silly for you not to participate. And because I think of the relationships he had built over the years and the relationships that I've been able to build in my short time there, these folks were sort of okay with the idea of at least starting an experiment around this. So let me go into now like how we identified that coalition. The cool part about the customer journey map is the ITIL 4 content maps out is it sort of gives you a template to imagine your organization end to end across the customer experience. And when you lay out the customer journey here and you consider your organization and how it fits within that journey, you can start to imagine who might be useful folks to be in a customer journey mapping conversation. If the intention of this session is to get this group of people to talk about the journey, document its actions, discuss its pain points, discuss the feelings and the emotional aspect of our customers, and to be able to talk about the different touch points and interactions and so on, you need to have people in the room who are witness to that, right? Like you have to take people who are on the other side of that customer journey, who are providing the service to the customer, to get their perspective on what that journey is. It's the next best thing from asking the customer directly. And so who might that be? Well, you have logical constructs within your organization already that map very nicely across this customer journey. So my friend and I took the time to reach out to someone from marketing, sales, their support staff, customer support, customer success, and product. And we have about 15 people in our work group that meets regularly now. We meet once every 2 weeks. And the topic of the conversation is really just to practice building customer journeys. Like that's the whole intent of our operation. So how did we convince these people to go along with us? Believe me, my friend and I are not so popular at Pearson that we can build this coalition on our reputation alone. It did take a little bit of salesmanship. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about the preparation that went into that sales approach, if you will, if you consider it from the internal perspective. And it all happens to be built around the continual improvement model. When I was sitting alone here in my home office, imagining what possibilities were of using customer journey mapping, I was imagining my vision for this. I was thinking about the future in terms of being able to instrument this journey and in real time, being able to pull data and feedback directly from the customer as a function of the different value streams and processes and service blueprints that feed that customer journey. And I was imagining this utopia of this just web page I could pull up that just showed me at any point in time all the customers I had and at what point in the journey they were in and how satisfied they were in that journey. And then I kind of drifted from outer space and then back into reality and started to consider, well, where is my organization now? using the problems that I identified before as sort of the catalyst for my thought experiment, trying to understand, like, if we have those problems, like, what is it about our organization today is creating those things to be true? Like, where are the opportunities? And then you start to wonder from there, where do you want to be? And still, I'm kind of sitting in my home office here, just imagining things. But what I'm building as I'm going through the continual improvement model in my imagination is I'm building an argument that I can present to other people. I am doing some pre-work for everybody else I'm going to need to be a partner of mine to make this work. By me having a vision, by myself understanding where we are and where we want to be, and having at least an outlandish idea on how we might get there, gives me a starting point to talk to my friend. I went to him and I said, this is my vision, and this is where I think we are, and this is where I think we could be. And that is what drove the conversation. And that's what drove the conversation with convincing this coalition as well. Now, I had the power of a partner who was sharing the same argument as myself with other peers of ours. And so now the power of us is double in essence in terms of our influence and our ability to leverage our relationships. And then you can see how it multiplies from there. The people that we bring onto our coalition are simply adopting our vision, our understanding of where things are now, where they want to be. We are giving them opportunity, of course, to contribute their own viewpoints on these things. Maybe Norin and I's vision is wrong. Maybe we don't fully understand where we are now, but it gives us that starting point so that they can challenge us and they can get engaged and we can have the conversation. And forgive me, my coworker just walked in. Thank you, Georgie. I'll come see you in a little bit, okay, buddy? All right, sorry about that. Where was I? I love my little guy. That was my son, George, and he did some homeschooling, and we got some lunch delivered to the house, and he was very polite to bring it in for me, so I'm grateful for him. Anyway, so the point I'm trying to make on this slide is that you know, when we go through the classes and we take our lessons around the ITIL way of thinking, the continual improvement model is everywhere in that course, right? Like this idea is it permeates through the notion of what we're trying to do, and this is another example of how valuable and how powerful it can be, in the sense that it can be used to change moods and politics and sentiment around the different initiatives that you're trying to work on. And so what did we do with this customer journey work group? I mentioned earlier that we practiced, like, so I had this absurd vision of someday in the future, this dashboard that shows me where all of my customers are at any point in the journey and how satisfied they are as a result of it. But that's, we can't get there yet. That is absurd, right? It's just in my imagination. And so what do you do to get there? You have to build the skill set of your team to accommodate that. If we were trying to put on a theater show, we would train our actors to in skill sets around acting. If we were putting together a baseball team, we would train them on how to field ground balls. This is no different. If we want to put together a customer journey work group, we've got to get them to practice the fundamentals of what it is it means to put a journey together, and how you interpret the journey, and how you leverage the information you get out of that conversation to affect change in your organization. This took an imperfect path to get here. So all these different maps that I'm showing you are different iterations that my particular work group has actually already done. This is real life in the wild stuff. There are a couple of these that are actually being used as the premise of some of our projects and the project plans that wrap around those. We did tactical journey maps that were trying to understand how we could make little changes and how that might affect the customer journey as it relates to little changes. We were looking at large projects and trying to do customer journey maps that tried to articulate the experience across some of our year-long initiatives, for example. We tried strategic maps, which really weren't looking at any individual project at all, but we're considering, you know, given our experience today, what are things like? We put together all sorts of different contexts of journey maps. And as a result of that, it came to the conclusion of several lessons. I learned so much more than I printed on this page. But I thought that this bulleted list was sufficient for this conversation. The first thing I learned, and this is in the context, not just with customer journey mapping necessarily, but in the context of any change enablement that you're trying to do, whether you're introducing new product ideas or new ways of working or whatever the case is, partnerships are key. your influence is doubled. Of course, depending on the influence of the partners you make, the more the merrier here. You are going to be more powerful as a team, as an individual. I can't possibly go and convince the whole organization myself that these ideas are good. You have to make this infectious. You have to get folks on board with you who are willing to do the selling when you're not there on this stuff. Journey maps bust silos. We have this regular work group now, and this work group really does consist of the departments that I outlined on the slide previous. And this was one of the few meetings. This may be the only reoccurring meeting that I have in my organization that is cross-functional in this nature for this purpose. I get comments from the team all the time in terms of, I wish we had more conversations like this, where marketing people are discussing the customer experience with salespeople, who are discussing the customer experience with product people. Like, the conversation isn't happening behind closed doors, it's happening in front of everybody, so that these different organizations can hear the same tune. They can all empathize in the same way. They can all align on the same problems, on the same intentions for the customer. And so these things, this is really powerful for creating cross-functional teams. It's a template for building a cross-functional team. Keeping the momentum with continual improvement. I think I hit this one home enough. Like, that continuous improvement, the continual improvement model was key to my ability to convince other people that this was a good idea. This is something that, as a lesson that I'll take on to any change management or change enablement effort that I go through in the future. Practice and learn as a group. I've learned that people like to practice. Literally, I was the only one in the work group who had any formal education on customer journey, and the team was able, through repetition and through failing with one another and through putting together journey maps that didn't make sense and through putting together journey maps that made a lot of sense, and we developed a skill set. We didn't have to all take classes, right? We practiced together. We learned as a group, and there was an appetite for this. Folks wanted this. They were willing to do it. They gave us their time every 2 weeks. And then lastly, the conclusion I've drawn about customer journey mapping is, despite the fact that we've ranged our implementation of customer journeys from the tactical and at the micro project level to the macro project level, and we have done some strategic journey maps, I have drawn the conclusion that customer journey maps are best used when thinking strategically about your organization. There are so many other tools and mechanisms that Lean, Agile, et cetera, provide us in terms of getting through the tactical and the day-to-day, that I think if you were to spend time forming a work group around customer journey mapping, the intention should be for the long term and trying to understand your strategic direction as an organization, again, using the customer journey as the perspective for solving those problems. And that takes me into my last slide here, which is, how does the customer journey then fit within this ecosystem that you've put together within your organization? And when you consider it at the strategic level, at least the conclusion that I've drawn is that this represents the initiation of your customer feedback loop. All of the touch points and interactions that exist along your customer journey, since they are connecting directly with the customer, are points of opportunity for you to collect feedback. And if you can consolidate the feedback that you're getting across your customer journey into a feedback repository, you can send that feedback through all of the old school, classical, agile ways of working that we've all come to know and love, in terms of taking that feedback and running it through design thinking to build your backlogs, to build hypothesis statements, and then to take those hypothesis statements and run the plan, do, check, act cycle, and to use the customer as your basis for understanding whether you're moving in the right direction. And guess what? All those things that you're doing are feeding the customer journey. And guess what? Every time the customer interacts with you or your organization, you have an opportunity to collect feedback and to keep the cycle going routinely. And so the conclusion I've drawn really is that customer journey mapping is an invaluable tool. If there's any way for you to convince your organization or to get a coalition built around exploring this, it's totally worth your time, and it is possible. It's something that you have to work on and be intent around doing, but we can get these ideas embedded in our organization. And there's no doubt that with, I think, a little bit of intention around being that politician inside your organization to build those coalitions, I think that's the key. So anyway, thank you all very much. That was so much fun to talk about, and I could talk about this stuff all day, but that's sort of where I got to there.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Joe, for sharing. And we're going to have a good amount of time for Q&A. So if you don't mind giving me, I'll take screen sharing back and just go through a couple of announcements, and then we'll finish up the rest of the session. And I know there will be a lot of good feedback and a lot of good questions and some dialogue that we can share around this topic. So that'll be awesome. Let me go ahead and bring my deck back up here real quick and share that back out. Oh, started it back at the beginning here, I guess. So just a couple of quick things that I wanted to share. I always like to show the training class schedule for ITSM Academy, as well as for my own organization. I train IT leaders as part of these sessions in case people are interested in learning more. So you see the list of training classes that are coming up here for the next few months. We have ITSM for DevOps. We have High Velocity IT from ITIL 4, which I believe Donna is going to be teaching. We have a foundation class for ITIL 4 mid-April. And then the Drive Stakeholder Value class, which is what a lot of Joe shared, is around that content of the customer journey map, is late April. We have discount code here, I train at 15 for 15% discount off of any of the public classes. And then one of the things that I wanted to talk about just real briefly that I'm working on is putting together an actual strategic leader training package, which includes the foundation class, the direct plan and improve class, and the digital and IT strategy class together as a package. And so I'm working in conjunction with Lisa Schwartz and ITSM Academy to put that package together, and more to come on that later this week. And I'll be announcing that through normal communication channels. Our next meeting's tentatively scheduled for a month from now on March 9th. I'm still working on topic and speaker. I'm actually considering doing a roundtable and having a little bit of a group discussion. I know some of my trainer friends and other colleagues on this group it might be fun to have you be a part of that, around the difference between practice and process. And from a practical standpoint, what does it mean as we're making that transition, as we're incorporating our new learnings and ways of working from an ITIL 4 perspective. So looking at potentially doing a roundtable discussion around the topic of practice versus process next month, but I'll announce more on that soon. A couple of other quick announcements and links. I try to show and record all of these meeting sessions. I've got a fledgling YouTube channel with the link there where you can grab these recordings, or if you know of other folks that will be interested in this content that weren't able to attend the meeting today or any of our past meetings, I've got that link there. Another couple of pieces I wanted to announce: our local Western Idaho Project Management Institute chapter is doing a professional development day on Friday, March 5th. The link to sign up and learn more about that is listed here. I'm going to be one of the presenters at that virtual conference, and I'm looking forward to that happening here in March. And then final piece that I've been promoting the last few meetings, we had Greg Sanker as a guest speaker back in November to talk about change enablement. They have a blog and a YouTube channel called Keep the Learning On, with regular content that they present every Friday morning, and encourage all of you to check that out. And if you like this session, if you feel like these meetings are worthwhile to continue the support and momentum around, please do connect with us on our Boise ITSM meetup and LinkedIn group, share with your friends, and definitely would love to continue to expand the audience and make these meetings continue to add more value for more people. That's all I have for announcements. I'll stop sharing my screen, and we have about 25 minutes left for some Q&A with Joe. So I'll open it up if anyone wants to jump in and ask some questions, or have any discussion with Joe on what he's presented here for us today.
Hey, I'll jump in. I'm a pretty shy guy. This is Keith. Hey, Jeff, before I get over to Joe, just a couple of things. I saw an email this morning from ITSMF USA for the 2-day conference coming up in March, and they released the email this morning on who all the keynotes were. And so I just kind of thought that I'd throw that out. But I think I also have heard, and Donna can validate, I think that there's an XLA Foundation or something like that coming up in a month of March by the Academy. And the reason that I mentioned that was that when I listened to Joe speak, which was phenomenal, what a really nice job, I could hear a lot of the XLA conversation in there. And to me, Jeff, it's just a testament to something that I've maintained, that people like you and I have to make sure that we continue to help Alan Nance and Bill Barrett understand the true connection that's within the ITIL 4 framework and the kind of things that they're talking about. You and Donna will probably want to harpoon me, but I have not taken the DSV class yet. And I made the connection to Joe's presentation in that class. I actually wrote, the customer journey and the XLA, but I also think about the value stream mapping aspects of that. And Joe, what I really like what you said was, and I wrote it down, customer journey maps should be considered strategic. And we said, when you do value stream mapping, it operates at a strategic level because of all the different groups that have to be engaged. And I wrote down a lot of notes, Joe, but I just kind of thought that that was really well done. And this whole concept of people liking to practice. So Joe, I kind of wonder of that group that you ended up building as advocates, because what I wrote down is, how do you get others to become an advocate of what you're trying to do? Can you share with us some of the roles of those various people? I'm interested if there were like BRMs involved in there or customer business partners, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so when we were on our quest to find out who would be best to sit in this work group that we were putting together, we asked ourselves the question, like, who has direct interaction with the customer? Because when you think about the customer journey map, and one of the fundamental aspects of it is an outline of your organization's offered touch points and interactions. And so if you're going to paint the picture of a customer journey map, you should probably have the people who are responsible for those touch points and interactions on your customer journey work group. And so we have sales reps who have a territory, just like any classic sales rep do, make phone calls every day with customers. We have 2 of them on our work group. We have 2 customer success representatives. We have 2 customer support representatives. At Pearson, we have a unique role called a faculty advisor. This is a sales support person. So our sales reps will make relationships. These faculty advisors are folks who work with customers to help them see how, like, they're past instructors, they're past users of our products. Like, they help the customer see how they could use it in their own context, something a salesperson maybe fresh out of college wouldn't have the benefit of doing. So we have them in our work group. And then we have product people. We bifurcate our product organization. We have a commercial product organization, which is responsible for shepherding the priorities of our content manufacturing, like the textbooks, if you will, in the digital age. And then we have what is called the application product management team, which their responsibility for shepherding the priorities of the infrastructure, the hosting of that content. And so we have each of them represented on our customer journey work group. And I think that sums it up. But and so obviously every organization is different. The advice I would have is ask yourself the question, who is interacting with my customer? And you should probably have somebody like that on representative of your work group.
Really nice work, sir. I will shut up, but I'll just end with it. So what you described was definitely not inside out. I mean, it covered the whole spectrum. Nice work.
Thank you.
Joe, my name's James. By the way, I see you work with Ryan Munson. He is from the Boise area. He was a great manager. I worked with him at Taos.
Ryan introduced me to Jeff. Anyway.
Yeah, he's great. Hey, do you get much pushback from the customer on this? Do you get anybody who says this is not the way we do it? So right now we have gotten to the point where we are building hypothetical customer journeys. So when I think about where I see my little work group going this year and into next, it's I do have to make a tactical shift away from, I need to be careful how I use my words. We have been experimenting with tactical journeys. I need to shift my work group away from that and get them focused more on that holistic view of the way things are. And so with that said, we're just experimenting with putting together our hypothetical journey maps. The customer hasn't been involved directly in the conversation. The plan is to take our hypothetical journey map and to validate it against reality. So First, we have to establish an understanding of what our scope is. And so we paint this picture of the end-to-end value to realization delivery system and from the customer's perspective. And then we make guesses, we hypothesize about what that looks like with the customer. The next phase is for us to test those hypotheses to say, is this what the customer is actually seeing? And if not, how so? One thing our organization lacks today too, which I think is commonplace in many organizations, going back to that XLA conversation, is we don't have a lot of measurements around sentiment. And a major fundamental part of a customer journey map, and especially if you're trying to get the perspective of trying to improve the experience instead of trying to improve the product, you have to have an understanding of what that customer sentiment is, and we lack that today. So no, we haven't gotten any pushback from our customers, but that's simply because we haven't included them in the process yet. I do expect this work group to be surprised. I expect us to take our hypothetical customer journey map and to go and validate it and to realize that we were wrong about many of its points. And that's what I'm really looking forward to, is making our team think in terms of the real life experience of our customers. Disney has such a lucky the business model, because they can literally see the smiles on the faces of the kids that run through their operation. Pearson Education, all of those people are hidden behind their computer monitors. And so we have to figure out how we can get to the point where we see people are happy. And yeah, anyway.
I walked out of a restroom in a Florida airport and they had, how was the service at the restroom? Happy, sad, frowny, smile, and you push the button as you left. That's what you need.
I don't want one of those push buttons outside the bathroom, though.
But that's what you're looking at, right? Like
That's
the smiley faces versus, and you know, an NPS score type of situation. So I really like this. It's great. It's something that, of course, we kind of used with Taos, but not constructed like this. And this would have been really nice to have. So good job. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's Donna.
Hi, Donna.
Hello. I first of all realized how quiet you actually are in class. So now going forward, I know how dynamic you are, and I'm going to call on you more. This was super awesome. You know, just to build on what you've talked about, if you view this as strategic, at some point you're going to need leadership support, and you're going to need, right? If you really want to take a holistic approach and tackle some of those big issues, are you getting visibility from leadership yet, or have you been down the down low a little bit, or are you just starting to try to get some visibility with leadership, and how's that going?
We do have some visibility with leadership. While I do get to play cowboy at my organization, my boss still does hold me accountable to telling him what I'm doing. And so I have been looping him in, and we have his full support. His role, he's a VP of commercial product management. And essentially, his scope is over a portfolio of products. And so we have his buy-in that this is worth investing in, and we have his support in terms of organizing this work group. In terms of convincing our leadership, my partner and I have gotten together and strategized this year around our go-to-market planning process and incorporating this customer journey mapping into how we do go-to-market planning. We currently don't have a formal go-to-market plan. Like a lot of our projects, again, like I feel like when I say this, like literally every organization in the world suffers from these problems. Like a lot of our projects, when we release them to production, just don't have the change enablement practice around them to make things satisfactory and happy for the customer. And so, we don't really have a formal go-to-market plan as it relates to looping in many parts of the organization to delivering on this experience. And so this is a long-winded way to answer your question. I'm getting there. What I'm trying to say is that our hypothesis is that if we can use the customer journey map as a template, if you will, for the go-to-market plan. Like if the customer journey map is really just a collection of touch points and interactions, that represents for you the scope of change that is occurring within your organization. And you should be able to theoretically derive a go-to-market plan by pulling from those touch points and interactions in the customer journey. Maybe not everything's changing at once, but you could say, I have email campaigns, I have in-app messaging, I have sales reps, I have a website. Some of those are changing in the next release, here's what I need to do to capture that scope so that I can manage it as an organization. This is how I think we get our leadership to see the value in customer journey mapping. If we can tie it directly to how we organize and how we deliver value to the customer, I think it's an easy sell for them to use it this way. And I don't know if that hypothesis is going to work. We have a lot of work to do. I struggle the most with leadership and change enablement, right? Like it's the know-it-all leaders that their way or the highway kind of folks that make it really hard. I haven't hit that resistance yet. I know I will eventually as we climb up the chain of command. But I think if we can, at the grassroots level, build this into our mechanics, into our ecosystem, the way we operate, then the leadership will sort of just simply adopt customer journey mapping by virtue of our good work, right? Like it'll just be the way we do go to market planning. It'll be the way we imagine our portfolio backlogs, et cetera. So I don't know, I could still be thinking pie in the sky, but that's sort of where my head is at the moment.
No, I think you're spot on. If you've read the Phoenix Project or the Unicorn Project, they actually, how they get support for their projects is by tying it to sales and by showing, right, that it can lead to profitability. One other quick question, if I can. So have you had conversations about journey mapping versus value stream mapping? I mean, was there any confusion around that and how they're used? And is any value stream mapping going on in the organization?
Sure. The answer is yes. I'm experimenting with that as well. When Jeff and I started talking about this opportunity for me to speak here, I could have done a presentation on any of the things you just said. The customer journey mapping so far has been the most successful in terms of affecting organizational change so far. We are practicing value stream mapping. I see customer journey maps and value stream maps as two parts of the same Russian doll, though. So if you think about the customer journey map, and there's the band of visibility. On one side of the band, you have the customer. On the other side of the band, you have the service provider. Well, underneath the service provider are a series of value streams that are feeding those touch points interactions, that are manufacturing those touch points interactions. And so I'm thinking as an iteration down the road as tying value stream mapping to the customer journey map. Like, what are all those touch points and interactions? How do we make those things? How do we know when it's right to invest in them? How do we know when it's right to pull back investment? And to think about our opportunity and our cost in terms of funding or not funding certain value streams. That's sort of where I have in my head integrating these things. But like a lot of the stuff we're working on, the customer feedback loop project, that is part and parcel of this whole thing, right? Like customer journeys, value streams, service blueprints are a part of the customer feedback loop, right? And then I'm working on a content delivery pipeline, which is a literal value stream. It is as fundamental a value stream as you can get, where you have some content idea. That content idea has to be built, has to be released to customers, and they have to see value at it. We're practicing using value stream mapping to imagine how we improve that workflow. And so it's all like when you say like, are you practicing this or that? Like, yeah. And it kind of just all mixes together once you start to put it all into practice with one another. And so yes, like it's actually been a really exciting, like 2020 was a really exciting year for me. I was suffering from a little bit of the project that I was on, and Jeff knows full well about this project as well. It was a real pain in the ass, slow slog, waterfall style, lots of bugs on the back end type project. And I was starting to get a little discouraged as a result of being a part of that. But then this year, despite the pandemic, I buckled down. I got my education, Donna, as you know, through your organization, thanks to Jeff. And I started putting this stuff into practice only to realize that it works. And so if you want to do customer journey mapping, do it. If you want to do value stream mapping, do it. You don't have to start anywhere in particular. No, it's all a function of the same ecosystem, and that by fixing any one part of the machine, you're fixing the whole thing. And so experiment with it and realize for yourself how these things come together.
Yeah,
Awesome.
great
Yep.
answer, Joe. And just yeah, and sorry, Don, didn't mean to interrupt. I was just gonna say, if you hear in Joe's answer to Donna's question, and this is what jumps out to me with Keith's point about the strategy side of this, right? You hear words like portfolio and finance and investment and those things really are the ultimate backbone of making strategic decisions and determining the priorities of your strategic initiatives. And so I do think as this goes forward, it's going to be exciting to follow along. And I told Joe I want him to come back and do another presentation down the road after he's made some more progress and some more of this has been implemented, because I do think it is going to have that larger strategic impact, and not just be something that is being viewed as a way of working, but really is going to make more seismic shifts within how his organization looks at the world. And so it's fun to see that coming to fruition.
It's a way of thinking. Yeah.
Yep. Other questions or comments or feedback for Joe? We've got about 10 more minutes left.
Just a quick comment from me again. I mean, Donna, before you got to your second question, I was thinking that Joe is hitting this at the most perfect time based on what we think the market is talking about. For instance, I read a blog or a white paper just in the last couple of weeks that kind of said that this was going to be the year for value stream management. And I had to actually talk a customer down off the cliff. They were looking at the things over on the management practitioner side of the scheme as being day-to-day stuff. I'm like, no, create, deliver, and support maybe, but not DSV, not HVIT, right? I mean, these, not DPI, obviously. I mean, these are big things. And we've all been saying that ITIL 4 is finally tracking ahead of where most people are. So it was absolutely valuable to see that Gartner is putting a lot of attention, and Forrester, whoever, on value stream management this year. And I think this is all connected together, Joe. I think you live in a sweet spot at an area that's right for it. You don't have to go sell it. You've already done that part. And I can absolutely see it refreshing a person from the nonsense that we've had to deal with for so long.
Yeah. It is refreshing, yeah. It was refreshing to see when leadership gives folks the room, when leadership gives them the agency to decide what a good idea is or isn't. While I did have to do some sales to get these folks on this work group, I had 100% close rate. Like, nobody said they didn't want to be on the work group. And so but they want this. They already know, whether they call it customer journey mapping or not, there is a demand for this in your organization already. It's a matter of unlocking it, and hopefully leadership giving you a little bit of freedom to realize it.
I can almost hear John saying from the story that he told, I knew we could have done this better.
All right, still have several folks on the line that haven't chimed in. Anyone who hasn't had a chance to ask a question or share any feedback, please go ahead. We've got a few more minutes left.
Oh, I have a question.
Sure.
I just thought of something. So, Joe, how then did you make the transition to doing this virtually? So when you do your mapping exercises, are you using something like, what's that tool, Jeff, that Carrie uses? How are you doing it virtually, Joe?
Yeah, so the tool we use at Pearson Sponsors is a tool called Lucidchart. Very similar to any other whiteboarding tool that you might have out there. It's basically a juiced up version of Visio. And it has a lot of customizability in terms of putting together little pictures. And so I drew customer journey map templates. I saved one in my my file that I could copy over and over again. And it just had the outline of the customer journey, explore, engage, et cetera, et cetera. And then anytime you need a customer journey map, you copy and paste and move on. And I facilitated all of the conversations, and the approach I took was being the scribe myself. And so giving the freedom of folks to just use their words and their voices over the conversation. The way I looked at it is I brought in the experts, like who knows better about the customer journey than the people who talk directly to the customers. And so I didn't want them to be overburdened by having to learn the new tool. So one approach I did take was I was the driver. I owned the writing ability, but it was just me scribing their words into the document, because this also freed their burden of having to know what a customer journey map is, right? Like I could give them the overview. And so I could set the context and they could all be on the same intention with me, at least on what we're trying to achieve in a customer journey mapping session. But by me driving it and me hearing their commentary and knowing whether or not that commentary was thinking or feeling or a declaration of sentiment or a pain point or an action or a touch point or interaction, I built the map through their conversation. And then we'd step back. I'd always save a few minutes at the end of the session to step back and say, does this look like what you thought it would? Like, is this right? Is this wrong? What's next? Where do you see opportunity? And then the conversation goes from there. And so, yeah, that's how I facilitated them and the tool I used.
Mural was the tool I was trying to think of. I'll put it in the chat. It's like Lucidchart, like it's just another.
That's right.
So that's cool. And everybody just adapted to that. I mean, I think we are adapting to this new way of collaborating together.
That's just it. And when you set the stage too, like when you let so I mean, going back to the Agile Manifesto, right? It's conversation over documentation. You're not getting together to build a customer journey map. You're getting together to have a conversation about the customer experience. And by virtue of doing so, a journey map comes from that, right? And so all the journey map is a mechanism or a catalyst for the conversation itself. And we don't need to have any special technology other than Zoom to be able to have a conversation. And if you have the right facilitator, then I think then that separation can be overcome.
Right. Yep. And can I just say, as an educator, it makes my heart sing when I hear you like using phrases you learn in class, but applying them in the real world. Like that's what we're here for. We're not here, like same thing. We're not here to teach you what you need to know to pass an exam. We're here to teach you what you need to know to do better at your company. And it just makes my heart sing when to see you applying this stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, I literally regurgitate what you and Jeff and the rest of the instructors that taught me what you've told me. Like, I didn't come up with any of this, right? Like, you all gave me the ability. Like, it's like you gave me a whole box of Legos, and there's every shape of Legos I can imagine, and I can put together whatever I want out of that box. And I wouldn't have had all that collection of Legos if I hadn't come to you to get them. And so, and that's what this stuff is. Like, that's what I'll come back to this. It's not a way of working, it's a way of thinking. If you prescribe it as a way of working, people start to think like, well, they're going to make me do processes, they're going to twist my arm around governance, and that's not what this stuff is. This is to shape conversation. It's to change the perspective in which we solve problems, and people are very receptive to that when you put it in that context.
I think that's a great way to put it, Joe, and a great lesson learned, because I think in a lot of cases, that's where we've gone too far in the other direction in our past history. And it's nice to see, not only do we have a different framework and a construct to discuss those things, but we can do them hopefully more in the right way going forward too. All right, we've only got a couple minutes left. I know there's some folks I haven't said hi to or haven't heard from. So Greg, Jason, it's nice to see both of you here. Dennis, great that you could make it. Gretchen, nice to see you. Anybody, any final questions or comments from any of you who haven't maybe had a chance to speak yet? Okay, I see Dennis's chat. You bet. Good feedback. All right. Well, if there aren't any other final questions, we'll let everyone go. And I know we've got some next meetings to move on to. I appreciate everyone taking the time to be here today. And please, again, share the word about our meetings, and hopefully we'll see you and bring a friend to our next meeting on March 9th. Look forward to seeing everyone again soon.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Jeff. You're welcome. Bye, everyone.
All right. Bye.